Welcome to our panel discussion with senior leaders from some of the largest research universities in our community. This is such a great way for us to close out the formal sessions for the Kuali Days research track. We do have one more social opportunity this evening, a wine tasting, so please do consider taking advantage of that. But we are closing things out.
I didn't get my shipment of wines to taste. What happened?
It is a bring your own wine event. You can come and appreciate it if you don't have the wines. Before I ask the panel to introduce themselves, I do want to take a minute to thank you so much for spending this week with us and cover a couple of brief housekeeping items. First of all, we will be sending out a post-conference survey by email. So please do take a minute to give us your feedback on what you enjoyed about this Kuali Days and what you thought could be improved. We really do take that feedback very seriously and use it to help us improve and offer you something new next year. Recordings of most sessions will be available Monday of next week. We're going to be uploading them back into the session description. So the same place you went to access the sessions, that's where the recordings will be stored. Similarly, the slide decks will be available there as well in the same place, also by Monday of next week. And you and all attendees will have access to the Socio event platform all the way through October. So if you want to come back and reference something, that will be available to you. And we encourage continued engagement with the platform and participation in the other tracks that are upcoming. So Kuali Days as a whole extends next week and the following week, with our Ready and Financials tracks next week, and then builds the following week. So you are welcome at any of those sessions. So please do join them if they're of interest to you. We want to highlight two sessions in particular that are coming up over the coming weeks that are really intended for attendees of all the tracks. The first one is called Operation Restless Night, Tabletop Exercise Briefing and Kickoff, and that will be happening on March 3rd. And then on March 11th, we're having a session called The Future of Higher Education Technology in a Post-COVID World. So that should be very interesting as well. Again, that's on March 11th. So check the Socio calendar and take a look at the description of those events and consider joining. Our final housekeeping item is that we are having a build contest. We're giving away one free form and workflow application with 2 years of support, which is a value of $25,000 to a deserving institution. All you have to do to apply is share a process on your campus that you want to automate. Head over to our contest page, which is kuali.co/contest. You fill out the form, submit documentation of the process, and that's how you can be considered. The contest closes on Friday, March 12th. Okay, that does it for the housekeeping items. I'm going to go ahead and turn to the panel and ask each of you to introduce yourselves. Denise, would you be willing to start? And then you can pick the next person to introduce after that.
Hi, I'm Denise Clark, Associate Vice President for Administration at the University of Maryland. And in my portfolio is all pre-award, post-award, regulatory compliance, audits, and data integration. And I'm going to bounce to John.
Good afternoon. I'm John Bauman. I'm the Associate Vice President for Research Compliance for the campuses of Indiana University and affiliated hospitals. My range of experience with Kuali, direct experience with Kuali, is much more limited. I'm obviously only the compliance modules, have been a user of the grants one, but don't have administrative responsibility in any way for that. Faith?
Hi, everybody. I'm Faith Hawkins. I am Assistant Vice Chancellor for Research and Chief of Staff to the Vice Chancellor for Research at the University of California, San Diego. I came here about 1.5 years ago from Indiana University, where I worked with John and Kuali. And over the course of my career in research administration over the past 10 years, I've been involved in the implementation and use of the original Kuali research back in the day when it moved from COEUS and Kuali IRB, and we're now using here at UC San Diego Kuali Research, Kuali COI, about to implement Kuali IRB, Kuali Build. So I seem to be a firm user of Kuali, and all of the Kuali products fall at some level into my scope of influence. Sorry, Miroslav. I neglected to toss over to my colleague Miroslav Kristic. Oh, and you're muted, my friend.
Muted, yes. Thank you, Faith. I'm Miroslav Krstic. I'm the Senior Associate Vice Chancellor for Research at UC San Diego as well. I oversee research development and centers and institutes and a few other things. I'm a faculty member in engineering. My experience with quality tools is far more in the role of a faculty member and researcher than in the administrative role. So let me turn it over to Bess Jensen.
Oh, thank you.
That-
I'm just here to provide some technical support. So glad to be able to do that for you today. Thank you.
Thanks, Beth, and thanks to all the panelists. So this is really kind of a fireside chat format. We don't have any slides. This is going to be very conversational, and we really encourage you to participate in the conversation. So feel free, if you'd prefer, to drop a question into the chat, or you can go ahead and unmute yourself and just ask a question and join the conversation. So the first thing I want to ask our panelists is kind of a broad question to start things off with. What are the biggest challenges the research enterprise at your institution is facing over the coming year? Or if it's more appropriate for you to answer in terms of the area of the research enterprise that you're responsible for. Who wants to pick up that one? Denise, thanks.
So I'm going to attack this from two different angles, Casey. One is the biggest challenges as far as research administration. And I'd say that's foreign influence in being able to bring in conflict of interest, conflict of commitment, financial conflict of interest, all the various aspects that are coming at us in various data points from agencies. Because, oh my gosh, I've been in this since 1986. And one of the biggest things we have asked for since 1986 is a common data standard, data set. So if an agency could agree, like if NSF and NIH and DOD and DOE could agree on what other support means, how easy it would be for us. But we're seeing now with foreign influence that we are just like moving away from that, because each agency is coming up with a different definition of other support, or coming up with a different definition of foreign influence. So if we could find some common ground on that, I think that would be a benefit. So that's the biggest challenge and the hottest topic in the country of foreign influence. I think the second is, if you look internally, the biggest challenge is time is of the essence. So when I started in 1985, everything was paper driven. And oh my gosh, you could say, I don't have that yet, right? Where is it? Where is it? Well, I didn't get it yet. You can't say that anymore because everything is electronic and it comes to you in real time. And I have found that people's patience has gone down. Patience has gone down with electronic means going up, right? So the quicker that you get information, the less patience the sender has. And so working with that on the patient side, I think Kuali Build has a lot to offer in the challenges of how do you turn something around quicker? How do you route it, approve it, analyze it, and actually get the feedback that you need in more of a real-time mechanism. And Kuali Build has helped that challenge. So internally for me, it's the impatience that we have seen with electronic media and how to respond to that. Externally, it's that going back to this old 194 transaction set, and can the sponsors agree on a standard data set? So thank you, Casey.
Yeah, thanks for that. Does that resonate with others, Keith or John or Miroslav?
I would say, building on what Denise said, is every time you have an incremental improvement, everybody is happy about that improvement, but it also raises expectations. And so, the latest good thing actually just raises the expectations for the next good thing. And I say, in that light, I'd say that the new quality protocols has really been of great deal of benefit. From our staff perspective and also from researcher perspective, the new interface and the new process that's built into it has really facilitated our operations, and I believe has made it easier for researchers. The last thing that researchers want to do is learn how to be a quality expert in order to conduct their research. And I think that the new interface, the protocols program, has really helped us in that way. But again, it raises new expectations. And so one of the things that we're struggling with is, as good as the new system is, it now says, well, what are we now missing? And I'd say there's some breadth that does not yet exist in quality protocols that we're missing. It has a better reporting function than the previous systems, but we still find that we have to create a lot of reports ourselves. And in addition, we wanted to try to use one system entirely, but it does quality protocols. We don't yet have a workflow process that we could use, especially in the IRB world, where we have a very large HRPP, somewhere over 6,000 active protocols. And so we still need to use other systems in order to track some of that workflow and staff productivity and where a study is in the review process. So we have to use SharePoint. We would love to stop using SharePoint and have a way of managing workflow and the status of a protocol, status of a study within Kuali. So we'd like to see greater expansion of the breadth of the program in order to allow full operational use of it, rather than having to use other systems as well.
Yeah,
So I'm going to shoot us in a slightly different direction, not because I disagree with what Denise and John have said, but because I think they've said it so well. I have nothing to add there. But you specifically asked Casey about the challenges in a post-COVID world, and I doubt there is a university in the country that, in light of the pandemic, has not had to either reduce our staff or delay plans to increase our staff. And so for me, one of the things that I worry about as a big challenge in the post-COVID world is how can we leverage technologies to enable a smaller staff to be as effective as possible in supporting the research endeavor. And I think that Kuali Build is a great opportunity for that. We used Kuali Build to handle our research ramp up process from when we had no research or very limited research at the start of the pandemic, and now where we are. That was a lifesaver. I was able to do that on the backs of me and one other staff person because we had Kuali Build. If we had been sending PDFs around, which we did back in March, I would have needed an army. So I think most universities I know are going to be struggling for quite a while with this sense of the demands keep growing. Our staff is not growing along with it. And that's the place technology has to step in order to enable us to do the work that we're trying to do. And I would argue that's the biggest challenge we're all facing.
Casey, you mind if I ask Faith a follow-on on this?
Absolutely.
So this is so interesting, Faith. So part of this is really finding work-life balance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So with the post-COVID, if we hadn't had Kuali Research before COVID and we were still paper-driven, just imagine what the research administration enterprise would have gone through to not have this electronic routing and approval and to have electronic submissions. So in this portion where you talk about, staffing and such, do you think that we need to really kind of push the administration to understand this work-life balance and maybe allow more of the virtual, more of the remote working, and more counting on Kuali Research, Kuali Build, more counting on this infrastructure that we have to be able to allow the growth in our staff, not numbers, but growth in the staff, professionally, family oriented, and stuff in happiness?
Denise, my opinion here matters not at all. because I have no authority within my own organization, much less around other organizations. But yes, and I'm fortunate here at UC San Diego. Miroslav and I are both on a group that is working to envision what will the workplace look like post-pandemic. We did a survey. I don't think I'm telling tales out of school, but UC San Diego does a staff at work survey every year, which actually has a great response rate, to my surprise. This year's staff at work, which was issued in August, asked our staff some questions specifically about how we were handling the pandemic, but also in a post-pandemic world, do you want to come back to working on campus 5 days a week? 15% of our staff answered yes, which means that 85% of our staff said no. And that ranged from folks who said, I want to be remote 5 days a week, to folks who said, I want to have the option to be remote when I can. But that is a fundamental mental shift. And if, not that I think there's a good side to the pandemic, but if there is something that we have learned through the pandemic, it's that having been skeptical of effectiveness in remote settings, we have learned over the last year that it is possible to be very effective, not effective in the same ways, or not effective with the same dynamics, but very effective in a remote setting. And that is partially because of tools like Kuali Research and other technologies. Zoom, I mean, here we are having a conversation we could not be having but for technology. So we have to leverage all sorts of it. And I'm really worried, and I know Miroslav is worried, and others are, at other universities, I'm sure. Staff morale is a huge concern right now. And I would put that as our second biggest challenge in the year ahead. I don't think there's a technology that Kuali can build in the next couple of months that will help me with morale. But if the technology continues to help my staff feel like they are able to help faculty effectively without killing themselves, that'll help with morale.
So we were in a slightly different situation. And let me emphasize, it's not because we had any foresight, but we had a very assertive telecommuting practice prior to the pandemic. Prior to last March, we had people working from 20 to 80% off-site. And so the movement to doing it completely off-site remotely was not at all traumatic for our folks. But like Faith has said, we're also now assessing what's going to happen in the next couple of years. And people who were more reticent to work remotely are less reticent to work remotely now. And so we're going to continue to do a large amount of remote work, even after the pandemic. And the only reason that we really have to go into the office is the one thing that we can't do, which is have meetings.
No, but John, I want to jump on that one simply because of your expertise more in the RCR area. What about things that come up in the areas of scientific misconduct or other audit areas where you have to really go in? What sort I'm thinking of when you get a claim and you got to go in and you've got to quarantine or you've got to sequester. So talk, Casey, do you mind me asking this of John? I'm sorry.
No, it's delightful. Please continue.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that I struggle with because I have the whole RCR component too. And it's how do you deal with this idea of sequestration when we can have Kuali Research, we can have Kuali Build, we can have these excellent tools, but we're just missing that sequester, we're missing that one piece.
I mean, just on Tuesday, we had folks in the office because we had to do a sequestration for a misconduct allegation. And so what happens is we just schedule it and we make sure that we don't have a critical mass of people in the office at the same time. So we have people going in for very functional reasons. Our auditors will go in and we'll get the materials that they need. We'll we either scan or photocopy them and then take them and then work with them from remotely. They don't do the work in the office, but they do the work that's necessary to prepare in the office. And so now, so we had 2 people that were conducting a sequestration, or 3 people last Tuesday, and we just made sure that there weren't that many other people in the office that day. So, they do go into the office. So we now have people that go into the office for functional reasons that they can't do remotely. And then we occasionally have some people who go into the office because they're tired of taking calls and meetings from their laundry room.
And I think that Denise, you mentioned that it's hard to do meetings, or either you or John said it's hard to do meetings remotely. I'm less worried about that, because I think we've demonstrated over the last year that we can do meetings remotely. It goes back to the morale issue and some of our efficiency issue. I am physically in my office today. That has meant that with the other people who are in the office, we have already today had a number of in passing moments of, oh, wait, I wanted to ask you about X.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
we solve a problem without sending an email, thank God, in a matter of seconds. That's harder to do remotely.
Yeah. No, we actually, we had in that same vein, we probably over the past year had 3 very distinct issues that arose that, had we been in the office having those chats, they would have been dealt with much quicker before they got as intense as they were. But because, they were the type of things in which you definitely would have mentioned when you saw somebody, but it didn't seem like it was worth an email. And then a couple of them never grew and needed any further action, but several of them did. And so we jumped on them later, and after they had developed further than we would have preferred. So that informal is missing.
That makes a lot of sense to me. And so much of this is really interesting. I want to do 2 things. There are a couple of great questions. Ian, I see your hand is raised and there's a question in the chat. Before I get to those questions, I wanted to put this issue of communication, whether it's formal, informal, to Miroslav from the faculty and the research development perspective. I mean, how are researchers managing? What challenges are they facing in this area?
I'll speak to maybe only 1 or 2 issues, and probably more generally than would be ideal here. When it comes to constructing platforms and pieces of software, I've seen situations where the platforms that have been constructed by users are incredibly more usable than platforms that are constructed by those who are typically qualified to develop software. So to be concrete, you will find very few editors of journals who are capable of designing editorial platforms. And those few that have been designed by people who have both skills are there's no comparison how once you begin using something that somebody who understands the work has designed, you just can't believe that somebody expects you to use something that a person who's never done the work has designed under assumptions of what the person with the expertise in that work is doing. So that's pretty depressing, because when it comes to producing something for faculty, you're never going to find a faculty member sitting and constructing something in the Kuali framework that would be perfect for them. But that's how it is. The other thing that's pretty depressing is as useful as the electronic tools and platforms are, as they simplify things for us. Just as the staff members are overwhelmed by the proliferation of these things, so are faculty. But you know, just picture a new faculty member who is coming in and has to figure out how to teach their first course, has to figure out the substance of the first proposal or the first 3 proposals, the publications, the hiring of graduate students, being the best in the field or the best of the young in the field. And in the midst of all of this being the question, what is the truly creative, ingenious idea that you're going to offer the world of research? And at the same time, having to learn dozens of processes, dozens of pieces of software. The fact is that, you know, having been in this business for nearly 30 years, it's easy to spot trends. The trends being that the well-organized move ahead for the creative ones who are after the harder questions. It's just, there's no chance you can keep up with all that you need to learn. So that's a somewhat pessimistic perspective on what we can expect of faculty. I remember a training session for using a tool called Concur for travel. Yeah, it's important. There are so many ways travel can get mismanaged, and there is a tool that reduces the likelihood of that. At the end of that 1-hour session, the conclusion was obvious to everybody on the faculty side. There's no way I'm ever going to get into this. If it takes you an hour to explain all the ins and outs of what I'm supposed to do, that is supposed to take maybe 3 to 5 minutes. No, you know, it'll need to continue being done by a staff member who supports that. So the expectations from the faculty probably cannot be high, but certain crucial easy things, certifications, reporting regarding conflict of commitment, conflict of interest, foreign stuff, and so on. The stuff that's easy, the stuff that's 1 or 2 pages, the faculty will do it. The faculty will appreciate having a record of it. The faculty will be glad that they haven't had to bother a staff member. The faculty will appreciate not having to go through several iterations of emails and so on. I don't know if this answers the question, but that is what's on my mind as opposed to perhaps yours.
If I can ask a question of the other panelists and the participants, I don't know about you, but we used to have office hours in academic units and hospitals in order to answer questions face to face when people had them. And I will say that we gave that up years ago because the faculty were not coming to those sessions. We're not dropping into those office hours. They would much rather just sort of send a message when they needed some type of assistance. And so from our perspective during the pandemic, the inability to have that face-to-face immediate contact with faculty was really not a loss, because we only had purposeful conversations and they reached us when they needed to. And so I'd say the technology has absolutely helped that, but it existed prior to the pandemic in that we just did not get people coming into those office hour sessions.
John, I think, oh my gosh, like just hit upon a spark here. When we had the on-site academic leadership forums, we would have so many people. Now that we have academic leadership forums virtual on Zoom, it has quadrupled. So we went from having, 40 people showing up, 200 people show up now. Yeah. Now that you have this electronic means, and the minute we went on Zoom to talk about research implications with COVID in any of that, just the audience, the numbers increase. And so I think that's a unintended positive consequence, right, of the pandemic, is that you can reach people virtually easier than you can reach. We used to say, have food and they will come. Right?
Yeah.
Have a session where you have food, and they will come. Now I think the phrase is have a virtual session, and they will come. I don't know if that answered your question, John, but we have seen such a difference in individuals signing up for any type of virtual forum that we offer with the pandemic.
Yep.
At BYU, our compliance meetings are almost full quorum without a heartbeat now, because there's a Zoom link and a Zoom reminder, and you don't have to trundle across campus, and you just drop into your meeting, and it's that easy.
You don't have to park.
That too.
Or be worried about the students switching classes.
Yeah.
So that when you drive across campus, the students are there.
And our food budget went down.
Yes, yeah. In a piece of this, Casey, for the quality side of it, a piece of it I think is really building upon Kuali Build. I don't want to belabor this point, but there are so many things we've been able to do with Kuali Build that allow us to get routing and approval in ahead of time, so that when we have these forums, we actually have up-to-date information. So before, for a conflict of interest committee meeting, you have to have your disclosures in so many days prior, right? Because I got to have time to dissect, do this. With Kuali Build, you have that instantaneous ability to route and approve and comment, and route and approve and comment, that it has really, really been beneficial to the community in so many regulatory aspects. So
it's great to hear. I'm so glad. Ian, I wanted to circle back. I know you had your virtual hand raised. Did you want to pop in with your question?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. And thank you to all the panelists. While y'all are here, I have some very specific questions around Kuali, COVID or not. But we struggle. And again, my name is Ian Raphael. I work at UMass Amherst. I'm the director of project management programs and training programs for our campus. So I train our entire campus on Kuali, all the suites in Kuali. And so a couple items, and again, I want to echo how instrumental Kuali Build has been for us in terms of managing our on-campus research activities through this exercise. But my first question is, things are changing so rapidly. Our faculty and staff are now accessing Kuali in a multitude of ways, and we already are struggling with communication. And so it's really hard for everyone to be up to speed for every change that's happening within the system or change in requirements. And then, as we have seen so far in Kuali Days, understanding the pipeline and things that are going to kind of these small incremental changes, and how do you communicate that effectively to your campus? So that was my first question.
Casey, mind if I jump in? Sorry. And I'm going to ask my dear friend Steve Dowdy to join me here. Oh, Ian, I think you have hit at the heart of Steve's disastrous days. So Steve Dowdy, if you all don't know, is the the functional technical expert behind COEUS, which then turned into Kuali Research. And what happens is that this new functionality comes about, and I'll say, Steve, but I want this, this, and this. So Ian, as you talk about, Kuali Build is this, great facilitating tool. I think the pressure that it puts on you and your group, people don't understand, because once something is so productive, you want more of it. And so like right now, Steve's probably got 18 different things sitting on his desk to say, how do I implement it? And so I'm going to ask Steve to join in with me here, Ian, on I think technology is a great thing. except that for people like us that know the business, I want the next thing, Ian. So the minute I saw it, right, I'm coming back to you and saying that functionality was really great, but what about this, this, and this? And it puts the pressure on you to be able to give to me as leadership second, third, fourth data when you're like, I can't even roll out the first data. Am I making sense, Ian?
My question was, we make a change and we have to communicate this to the campus. And there's so many communications going out for so many things beyond even Kuali. Their bandwidth is so small. How do we get them? I'm just looking at what strategies other institutions are using to increase their communication pathways to faculty.
I'm going to bounce that to Steve too, because what happens, Ian, is that once we communicate this little, like I communicated Kuali Build to the campus, and then all of a sudden Steve's inundated with requests for Kuali Build.
Yeah, we're not even struggling with, I mean, we are every day expanding all and converting all of our internal approval processes to build. But I mean, we're inundated with questions on what am I doing? How do I fill out this? What information do you need? And then we change because our, COVID status changes or we get new information. And so relaying that out to other, to the campus, again, it's never easy given all the burdens of faculty in particular and trying to navigate all the systems that they have to navigate. So just thinking, I mean, what specific vehicles are you employing besides, if anything, beyond emails and all that?
I'd like to jump in, not on a specific vehicle that we are using, but one that I would like to be created. So this is a beg to the Kuali team, and but any software person. And it's a little bit in the chat. Manda Lampson asked about, do people push back on new technologies because they're familiar with old technologies? And maybe it's a sign of my age, but yes, I'm tired of learning new things. My brain is full, and a lot of it is lyrics of 1970s soft rock, which I don't need to know, but I can't dump. And so, it's a frustrating situation. What I would love, there is a software platform I use for personal reasons that when I log into it, if there have been changes in how it is functioning or in the interface, there's a little window that comes up and says, since you were last here, the following things have changed. And that prevents me from getting emails from the company telling me about the changes, particularly if they're kind of small scale, but it kind of orients me to it. It's like, oh, so if I want to save this, I don't hit Control S anymore. I hit, and I think if software builders could take some of that notification process to users when they log in, that would be that would help, I think, with some effectiveness. And I don't see a lot, my computer is always telling me to update my software, and I'm always hesitant to do it because I don't know what the hell I'm going to have to learn. And I get anxious. If it said, and once you do that, we'll tell you exactly what's different in a user-friendly way, I would be much more inclined to move to the new thing.
And Ian, I think you've moved from the technology to the political side of the house.
Yeah, I mean, I also think the other issue is you really have to approach it strategically. And I'd say there's two dimensions to what I'm thinking around that. So we've gone through, I think, 3 updates with Kuali with the HRPP. We did, I don't know, 10 or so years ago, we did Kuali COIS. And we just had an absolute countless number of workshops to educate people as to how to use it. And then, I don't know, a number of years ago, we went to KC, and we found out that we need, we found out that the better we prepare our communications, the lesser number of those educational outreaches that we needed to do. Just a couple of months ago, we went to Kuali protocols for the HRPP, and we did no educational outreach. We did a lot of communication, but we did it, I think we did it successfully and strategically, and one, the system is that much easier to use that we didn't need as much. I mean, you don't need to do a tutorial on how to use Amazon. It's pretty straightforward. And I'm not trying to sell protocols, but I think that the protocol system, similarly, it ain't Amazon, but on the other hand, it is so much easier to use than everything that came before. So we didn't need to do as much education, but what education that we did around that is we limited the number of communications going out and really vetted them through people who were users prior to doing it to make sure that it told them what they needed to do. And you know, we did a bunch of, like, you know, always had crosswalks and things like that, so they knew going from this program to that program, here's where things remain the same, here's where they were different. But I think the key thing that we have to learn is not to send out an email communication to faculty or to staff every time you make a little change, because they're going to start ignoring you and they're going to miss the big changes. So really to approach it strategically and figure out how you can maximize the information flow while minimizing the number of messages.
And I appreciate the question, and certainly with our continuous delivery approach, this is a challenge that schools need to confront. Steve, it looked like you were going to jump in.
I was just going to jump in and say that, you know, the older modules in Kuali, you know, the award module negotiations, and then we dusted off proposal development. And then Kuali brought in, you know, professional user experience designers. So I think that's why, you know, you don't need training to use COI. It's a la TurboTax, and you just kind of figure it out pretty quick, you know. And I think that's what makes sense. And I think Kuali does a really good job. And that not only do they worry about the functionality, is they worry about the user experience to make sure you don't need to sit in a 3-hour class before you're able to use the software.
I agree. We have all the compliance modules, and we've opted to not do any type of standard reoccurring trainings. We have some guides and materials, and we have ad hoc support, but we felt that we didn't need to really do a robust training program. However, on the proposal development side, we do. And my second question is, especially in the post-COVID world, we've had a fair amount of retirements and turnover, and we're seeing a new generation of people that don't necessarily have the content expertise and are getting thrown into Kuali. So we used to do lab trainings. Now we're doing demos because we're virtual. But I'm just interested to see if any institutions are employing some other creative training opportunities on the proposal development module, because there is such a huge learning curve for a new administrator to just be a research administrator, let alone navigating some of the systems. And so we are looking and investigating on ways that we can, you know, you get someone through a nice training program and they're like, great. And then we have some tools and training documents. That's great. And then 3 months later, they have to submit their first proposal. And, you know, we're still investigating opportunities to have like more ad hoc or point of need support. And I was just kind of curious to see what other institutions are doing.
So Ian, can you clarify, are you talking about central administrators, department administrators,
Departmental
or faculty? Like who are you talking about the training? Department administrators who are the point?
Yes,
Gotcha.
Department administrators and faculty. Some of our faculty don't have, depending on the nature of their support. So some faculty too have to learn how to build budgets. And so we get them through. I think we do a really good job of getting them a good baseline understanding. And then, you know, again, you lose some of that content when you have to then do your proposal 6 months later. Mm-hmm. So I'm just curious to see if people have taken other creative approaches to supporting those people.
I'm going to add a friendly amendment, if I can, Casey, to Ian's question, which is looking at that, how do you also make sure that the department administrators or the point of entry, right, and the people who are actually entering the data understand an activity type and a function type? So is it research? Is it instruction? Is it other institutional activity? And if it's research, is it basic? Is it applied? Is it development? So I hope you don't mind, Ian, I added on a friendly amendment to your question as to how do you train?
Right. So we do our quality training in conjunction with a core curriculum and research administration. So people who register get that introduction to what is research and instruction, and while they navigate that, they are also concurrently getting an introduction to Kuali, and then they walk away being like, mind blown, I have all this information now. Now I need to then apply it in the real world, and then holy cow, my faculty wants to do their first NIH R01 system, and I took that class 6 months ago with Ian. Where do we help them there? And I'm just curious to see if people have any ideas on that.
Thoughts on that, either from our panelists or if there are others who have something to share, please feel free to jump in.
And I'll stop talking now. Thank you very much for your time.
I'll jump in with something that we haven't actually gone live yet, but this is something we're kind of preemptively doing. I'm doing, the remote hands-on training leading up to our go live date, but we are also working with our central HR department who does trainings for the whole campus for other, professional development. They are creating recorded sessions that our staff will be able to go out there and look at. It just walks them through basic functionality in proposal development and a separate one just for the budgets. So they can go back with those in addition to, contacting me as a help desk person if they run into a stumbling block. That's kind of the way we're trying to approach it. If they will be able to pull down those videos on that HR site, whenever they need to.
That's great. Thank you. We've been investigating that too. I personally don't like my voice, so I can barely listen to myself for an hour. So I'm like trying to spare my campus from having to watch my videos. But I do think I think that is what we're considering as a viable option, so people can get training on demand, and it's then sensitive to our resource constraints centrally to be able to go out and help people and answer questions as best we can. So yeah, that is something that I think is a good option.
Yeah, they're the ones actually doing the recording, so people don't have to listen to me for an hour.
But Casey, in closing on this, can I say that I think Ian has hit upon the foundation of any system, whether it's Kuali Research, Kuali Build, or other means that feed our data warehousing, and it's data integrity. If your campus does not have a means to really define data and to provide data awareness and data integrity, and then do data sweeps for irregularities and anomalies, the data is irrelevant, right? I mean, what we're talking about is being able to use the data effectively. And in order to use the data effectively, you have to have the data definitions and the data definitions and data training at the level of input. Like, who is the person that's inputting the data? And does that person understand the data? So thank you, Casey. That's my high horse. Who's the person who's responsible to enter the data? Do they know what their responsibility is? Do they understand the data definitions? And do they understand the data integrity and what happens if that data is not correct?
I think it's also something that Steve mentioned is very important, is that if a technology requires that much education or training, you got to question whether or not the technology is doing what it's supposed to do. And I think that, and I'm very grateful that the latest version of Kuali, the protocols that we deal with, it really required, it had an intuitiveness that we simply did not have to do a whole lot of training.
Yeah, I'm just going to jump in. I carry multiple hats with Kuali, and I'm on the EST, the executive steering, or what is it called? Steering team, or and the Kuali Foundation board. And I think you see, like, the award module was the first Kuali product, and it's written in the oldest technology. Proposal development was written in generation 2 technology, and protocols and conflict of interest are now being written in generation 3 technology. So, you know, we struggle with, like, should we upgrade the award module? Well, it's really a back office function. So it's kind of easy for most people to punch in their account number or just say, give me my NIH award. And then they can read the screens because they don't have to actually do the data input. When we see in COI and protocols, as many times the faculty have to do that. And obviously in prop dev, there's a hybrid mixture. Some are lucky to have administrative assistants that do that, and some have to do it on their own. So, you know, we have to keep evolving and reiterating the technology and making those trade-offs. And I think what we strive for is anything that is faculty facing has top priority on the user interface, because it's got to be TurboTax easy to use. We can put a little bit more burden on the back office folks to go to training and come up to speed with that. But the EST is really working with Kuali, in case he knows this, to say, all right, when is it time to dust off this module, this module, this module, and bring it up to something more modern? And that's one of the trade-offs we have, trying to juggle our priorities with the KREST.
I agree with the front-facing part, but I will advocate for the award module, even though we have people that do it every day. They do it every day, and they have to live in that system every day. And so for them to, I'm hoping, you know, like,
yeah, that's what I said. That's the oldest technology, and it shows, right? 15 years ago, that was pretty cool stuff. And today it's like, man, that is horrible.
Well, thanks for all of this feedback. We have only a couple minutes left. I wanted to squeeze in one more question in closing, and that is, if there's one process you wish you could automate that would really just kind of solve a problem or change things in a really impactful way, what would it be?
I go back to the two things I said before: workflow and reporting.
Fair. Okay.
Increased automation for those two processes within the same system, rather than either have to do too much a secondary system or too much dancing within the first one. I mean, even within the IACUC world, there's reports that are required. Within IBC, there's reports that are required that the systems don't really have at this point in time.
Yep, I hear you. Makes sense. Thank you. Denise?
I would say the world of foreign influence. So conflict of interest, conflict of commitment, export controls. There are so many different data points. Yeah, you know,
makes sense.
So I'm supporting John on his RCR side of the house and saying that I think we have enough on research administration pre and post award to be able to handle our business. We do not have enough on the regulatory side. Our systems are so separate and dispersed.
I think I would, one of the things that is deep, where I'm really frustrated right now, which is not really research administration related, but it's doing my job related. In a remote situation, I am now put in the position of having to learn 5 or 6 different collaborative technologies. So some people here use Slack, some people use Microsoft Teams, some people use Google Docs, some people, none of those are actually particularly effective if I want to look at a proposal with a faculty member and co-work with them on budget development, or and so Basecamp is another one that somebody just wanted me to learn. Again, my brain is full of bad lyrics from the 70s, and there's just a limit to what I can learn. I would love collaborative software into which our different softwares could immediately kind of link, so that I can sit with you simultaneously working on a in a collaborative way on a conflict of interest or a protocol or whatever, that to me would be a step forward and appropriate for the world that we're facing in the next couple of years.
Thanks for sharing that. Well, thanks all for being here. Special thanks to our panelists. Really appreciate your time and your perspective. And thanks everyone for making Kuali Days 2021 research track a great experience. Appreciate it.